Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be replacing the top end, the piston, and the rings on this 110 Apollo that I picked up a few weeks ago. Figured I would make a video showing step-by-step process on how you pull the top end off this bike and replace it. These engines are super easy to work on and real easy to navigate through. And another plus is the parts are super cheap. A new piston and rings for this bike was $8 shipped to my front door. The new head only cost me 40 bucks shipped to my door, so you really can't beat that. But these little bikes are super fun and super cheap and easy to work on, so I figured I would bring you guys along and show you guys kind of the ins and outs on how these little motors work and replace the top end. Let's get into it. So I already took off the seat and the back fender and the side plastic piece that bolts onto the tank. So I'm gonna take this carburetor off and zip tie it out of the way so that way we don't have to pull off any fuel lines and reek up the garage of gas. Because all we're gonna be working on is this part right here. The gray part is the cylinder head, which holds your cam and valves, and this black part is your cylinder, which the piston moves through. We need to set this motor to top dead center on the compression stroke. So what we're gonna do is take this side casing off. There's two 8mm bolts, one here and one down here. And there's supposed to be one right here, but it's missing. We're going to take a 10mm wrench and take these nuts off right here, and that's gonna remove our exhaust. Either don't lose this piece or get a new one. This is the donut gasket ring. We need to take off this cover. So next we want to remove these caps. There is one right here and another one down here on the bottom of the motor. Also, before you remove this cap, make sure you place a drain pan under the bike because you're probably going to lose some oil. And you need to get the drain pan out anyways because next step is we're going to be draining the oil. Also, the oil is the straight plug. There is another plug right here that's on an angle. That is not your oil. Alright, now that your oil is finished draining, now we need to work on getting this motor to top dead center so we can pull this timing off and remove the head. Now on a 4-stroke engine, the piston is at top dead center 2 times, and you want to make sure it's at top dead center at the correct time. So by doing that, you come over here to the flywheel. If you see right here, there's a little notch in the casing, and if you see right here, there's a notch in the flywheel, and there's another notch here, but the notch with the T is the top dead center notch. So what you want to do is you want to make sure this line matches up with this notch in the case. When you got this back here lined up, then you want to come to the top of the motor or the front of the motor, however you look at it, to the head. And if you noticed right here on the top of the head, there's a little V-notch. This little V-notch needs to align with this little dimple mark in the timing sprocket. It's kind of blown out and looks like shit, but this little notch right here, now that you can see it, needs to end up 180 degrees over here. So, a perfect example for you guys right here. This engine is at top dead center, but it's at the wrong top dead center. It's at the top dead center on the intake stroke, which, as you can see, as I turn this motor over, this intake valve right here on top will start to open. See? You can see it pressing down, which is opening the valve. And boom, now it's closed. But now that it's closed, you know we're going into the compression stroke. Now we keep spinning, boom. The dot and the V-notch is lined up. And if we come over here to the flywheel, the T mark and the notch in the case is lined up as well. Now we are in the correct top dead center. Both valves are closed. A good indicator to check to see if the valves are both closed when you're at top dead center is just grab these little adjusters and move them, and you should have a little bit of wiggle because there shouldn't be no pressure on them. So let's go ahead and get these 4 nuts off. Alright, so now we want to take this bolt out right here on the side, and we want to get these 3 8mm bolts out of the timing gear sprocket. Take yourself a pick or a screwdriver and just slide the sprocket off and just kind of push it back like that out of the way. Once you get that last little bolt out right there, the head is pretty much free. Alright. I do believe the new motor comes with a new timing gear. So I just want to point out real quick that when you pull this cylinder head off, that there's going to be a washer that's probably going to fall out. You might not see it, so I'm letting you know now. There's this little rubber washer. It goes right here in this spot. It sits in there like so, and if you don't know about it and you pull the head off, it can fall off, roll underneath the bench, and you'll never think about it again. Alright, so we're ready to remove the cylinder. All we need to do now is take out this bolt right here. Also, we want to take out this bolt. All this bolt is a timing chain guide. It's just a round plastic guide that sits in here and keeps the timing chain apart. We are. Now to get the piston off the rod, there is a little tiny C-clip in here that we need to get a screwdriver or a pick and pick out and remove, and then we can pull this wrist pin out this way and the whole piston will slide right off. Now that we got that little C-clip out, after you get your piston off, clean up the area with a wire brush, and you're pretty much ready to reinstall everything when you get it in the mail. Oh shit, look what we got in the mail. We got our piston and we got our new head. Check it out. And we got a new plug, new donut gasket, new studs, new head gaskets. Look at them shiny new valves. Shiny new everything. And it does come with a new timing chain sprocket. And then here's our little piston. And rings. And new wrist pin. And new C-clips. So after I got the motor apart last night, I kind of ran out of stuff to do with the bike. So I decided to start cleaning stuff. So I cleaned up this cylinder. It cleaned up pretty well. And then last night I also took a wire brush and a wire wheel to the whole motor and cleaned everything up. As you can see, got the bottom of the engine cleaned up and wire wheeled. Everything looks super nice. Alright, we're gonna get the new rings put on this piston. I'm not gonna record me doing this because it's a pretty simple process, and if you don't know how they go on, just take a look at your old piston. The oil rings go on the bottom, and then the two compression rings go on the top. Alright guys, we got our rings installed. With these bottom oil rings, it doesn't really matter how they go on. This middle part right here, the like squiggly up and down ring, you want to make sure that the ends of it aren't overlapping. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but right here is where they meet. And they're butt up to each other, they're not overlapping. On the compression rings, they'll usually have a little letter stamped on one side. Always put that letter up. And last but not least, all of these ring gaps where they end right here, every gap needs to be positioned in a certain part of the piston. And if you need to figure out where to put the end gap placements, just go to Google, type in 4-stroke ring end gap position, and it'll pull up a diagram of where all of your end gaps need to be placed. Alright, so there's one of two ways we can do this. We can take the new piston and go ahead and connect it to the connecting rod, throw that wrist pin through there, and then slide the cylinder on and try to compress each one of these rings and fight and fiddle this piston up into the cylinder, which can be a little bit of a pain in the ass. Or, since the cylinder's off, we can just go ahead and compress each one of these rings and drop this bad boy down into the cylinder, and then take the whole cylinder, stick it on, and connect the connecting rod to the piston real quick, and then just push it all back together. That's what we're gonna do. Alright, we got the piston in, just threw on the new gasket. Don't forget the little washer. Alright, let's slide this bitch on. Alright. Push the rod up, put that wrist pin through there. Zoop. Alright, now we can fish this timing chain through the cylinder side and slide her on back. So before you close this up and seat this connection, leave a little bit of a gap. It will help you reinstall this timing chain guide or timing chain roller, whatever you want to call it. See, leaving this little gap in the back allows you to stick your finger in there and hold the wheel from falling back into the motor. Timing chain roller's back in. Let's go ahead and double check to make sure we didn't lose our washer yet. That's still there. There we go. We have the cylinder back on. Now we're going to throw on the head, and this can be kind of difficult, kind of tricky. We need to get the timing chain sprocket in here first, get it lined up to where we think it's going to be bolted in perfect. I'll show you guys what I mean here in a minute, but we need to get our gasket on and our little washer that goes right here. Here is our new gasket, boom, and then our little rubber washer goes right here. All right, let's get the head and get it prepped, ready to go on. All right, moving over to prep this head to be installed. The valves need to be adjusted before you install it. I mean, you can install it first and then adjust the valves. To make it easier while you have the head out on the bench, just go ahead and adjust the valves now. Because let me tell you, that's not in spec. All right, so the valve lash on this motor is 0.003 for the intake and 0.004 for the exhaust. Real quick rundown on how to adjust your valves if you don't know. First, you need to determine which valve's your intake and which one's your exhaust. That's super simple. Your intake valve is going to be super close to where your carburetor hooks up. And as you can see, carburetor hooks up on this side. This is the intake valve. This is the intake valve adjuster. This is your exhaust valve side. As you can see, it is where your exhaust would hook up. And then back on top, we got the exhaust valve adjuster. Now, when adjusting them, I went ahead and already did this intake valve. You're gonna need yourself a feeler gauge, and then pull out whatever spec your valve lash is supposed to be. In my case, the intake valve is supposed to be set to 3/1000ths. And in between the top of the valve and this rocker arm, you want to take your 3/1000ths shim, and it should slide through with just a little bit of drag. And as you can see, the 3/1000ths feeler gauge does slide in and out of there. It is kind of tight, but I'm going to leave it as is, and if it's hard to start or it doesn't run right, I'll loosen it up a little bit, but everything should be fine. Alright, moving on to the exhaust side. See how this one slides really easy? That's too easy. You want just a little bit of drag, a little bit of resistance. Right there. Alright, we're good to go. We can go ahead and get these timing chain sprocket bolts out and take this sprocket off. Alright, and here's what I was talking about earlier, trying to get the sprocket and the chain exactly where it needs to go. So you want to line it up in the chain links to where when we put this back on, this dot is going to be at the top of the motor. And as you can see now, I don't know if you can pick it up on camera, but I'm about a tooth off. So I need to come down this way about a tooth. I don't know if you can tell a difference, but that to me looks like it's pretty straight on. And when we put the head on, this should be top dead center. Alright, so when we're going to install this head, we want to feed this sprocket up through that gap. The sprocket only goes on one way. It's not a perfectly even triangle that's cut out for those bolts. The distance from here to here is actually the longest, and then these are short distances, so. Slide this baby on. Okay, so if you have some issues putting your head on, here's probably why. I'll show you. So take off this little side plate. This little guy right here, it's threaded inside. It's like a threaded insert. From shipping, this will slide around. This little slide pin will be blocking the hole for this to slide through. So just take you a pick or something, push it back through all the way over. Once you get it pushed through, you should be able to slide your head all the way back on. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bolt the head on first, so that way it pushes it all together, so I'm not having to push everything together and try to get this on. So let's get this head bolted down. This guy, gasket, 4 bolts, bolt here. Alright, I went ahead and got these 4 bolts tightened down and put this one in. Got everything tight, and now I should be close enough to pop this sprocket on. Alright, let's see here. So fucking close. There we go. Fuck. Damn, that was tight. Look at that. Bent my pick. Anyways, it's on. As you can see, our notch is right back to this notch, top dead center. As you can see, that notch lines up still. let's get these 3 bolts in. Alrighty, we are making some progress. Sprocket bolts tight, head bolts tight, head bolt tight, cylinder bolt tight. Alright, we're all good there. We're gonna put this timing cover cap back on and these inspection covers back on. Start getting the carburetor put back on, and we'll catch up with you here in a second. Let's go ahead and get this exhaust put on, or this carburetor put on. Let's get this gasket in here. And just like that, she is all back together and completely finished.
Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. You see the drip, yeah, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and the giddy up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get the bus. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. You see the drip, yeah, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and the giddy up.